When this new species was brought in, we didn't think much of it. These strange bipeds just seemed to always look straight ahead and never seemed to be enjoying anything, though every time we caught them by themselves, they let off a strange sound we were told was what they call laughter. But every time one of us entered, they would suddenly become very serious and stare at us with, well, for lack of a better word, contempt. We knew they didn't want to be here. We knew they were only part of this war because their own planet was brought into the limelight by being on the front lines itself. We knew that somehow they had been able to fight off an invasion on their own world. We all wondered exactly how they did that, and we would find out later. This would be the first time I would be working with these humans. I was told, no matter what, listen to them and try not to make too much noise. I didn't understand this at first, but my command had been very adamant about this. Try not to make too much noise, and the humans will make sure that you survive, and we can actually take a planet. Now, taking a planet should be noted that is much more difficult than holding it. It's actually easier to hold an entire planet than it is to hold a piece of terrain. A piece of terrain you can't hold very well simply because of the amount of all the ordnance that can be dropped onto you. However, you can't just blow up the entire planet. The amount of force necessary for something like that is just insane. Not to mention, why would you want to waste such a valuable resource? If you blew it up, you'd be spending the next 10 millennia trying to pick up all the pieces just to harvest anything, instead of having one big chunk of rock in front of you that you can actually work with. Though as we go on our patrol, we wonder if this rock is even worth it. This place is what the humans call a mud pit. It's not much foliage growing anymore, not after all the fighting that has happened. We have to meet up with our human counterparts, and as we move out, it is the normal song that we do. As we march, we continue with all our songs. The humans call this a cadence, yet we're not dancing. We don't understand this. There must be something wrong with the translator. However, as we move out, we wonder, where the hell are these humans? As we get further and further and closer to our point where we're supposed to link up, we wonder where they are. The enemy, the Knesser, they should be out there somewhere. We would know if they were close. We would hear their battle march as well, but we wonder, where are the humans? We stop for a moment, and it's just quiet. We are exactly where we're supposed to be, and we were told that the humans can be very, very silent. Silent but deadly. For some reason, every time we said this, humans gave a strange sound, a kind of we'd still have no idea what that was, but we believe it was something amusement, but we'll figure that out later. As we could hear the small battle march off in the distance by the Knesser, we began to get ready and started our own battle march, and suddenly arms reached up, grabbed all of us, stopped us, and there was, before we knew it, a human standing in front of each of us, holding each other with a hand in front of their face, with that finger in front of their mouth. We knew this well. This was the human symbol for shut the fuck up, be silent. And with that, they pulled us all into these small little caves that are dug into the side. We didn't even realize they were there. They were well camouflaged, and they were not making any noise. As we were pulled in, I got close and I could hear the command talking. The enemy was getting closer, making a march. They didn't know where exactly they were. Hand signals were given from each of these positions to another through a tiny little gap that could only be seen from another tiny little gap from the other side. And on the other side, you could see someone with a radio. They wondered what was going on. And as I heard the command talk, I heard the humans not call them the Knesser, but called them the Cancer. We don't know why. We know they can pronounce this right, but they said the cancer is coming. The cancer is spreading. What is with this? We wanted to chant. We wanted to get our battle morale going because that is how we have done it since time immemorial for our people. But every time we try to even start to hum, we're immediately grabbed by one of the humans and motioned to shut up. And if not, whispered right into our audio receptors, "Shut the fuck up." We listen close as these humans have a look in their eyes of not just determination, but also of fear. Fear that they're going to be discovered. As we listen to the battle march go farther and farther into the distance, the humans motion to each other, and then they start collecting all of their items and then begin to move out. We're told to move them. We're told to move with them all the way to the next point, where we will be able to watch over, an overwatch as they call it, to see where the enemy's going to be. We're surprised. The humans, for all their heavy equipment, move silently. They are silent and they are professionals as they move one step in front of the other, constantly moving their heads sideways and up and down and looking all around to see what was going on. It is as though every single one of their senses has been turned up to a level we did not understand. And yet, we just followed them. I looked at one of the humans on my side, and he seemed to have only simple equipment, though it seemed heavy. I guess these Terrans are able to hold it up a lot easier. That would cause my vertebrae to ache with every single step I took with all four of my legs. We wondered, and I asked as quiet as I could, "Why aren't you carrying more gear?" The human looked close and then pulled me very close and whispered, "Terrain dictates." I didn't understand at first, and then he motioned down to the ground. It was very sloppy where we were. In fact, even with my weight being spread across four different legs, I could see that I was starting to sink in. I could only imagine how bad it was for these humans, as they only had two legs. Even though they're a little bit wider on the base, it must have been difficult for them to move through, sinking down into the mud a good 5 or 6 centimeters with each step they took, trying desperately not to make any sounds at all as they moved. And as we did, occasionally I would hear each of them turn and say, "Shut up," to someone who started to hum or started to chant. There was, of course, the constant motion, the wave in front of the face to get the attention, and then the motion of the finger in front of the face. When one refused to knock it down, they were actually held on the mouth and told again, "Shut up." And that hand, that brawny human hand, would squeeze the front of our mandibles so hard you could almost hear it crack. And if someone still resisted on that, the humans had no problems striking the side of us. And with that, they would simply give the same motion for us to shut up. Silently, these professionals moved us towards the next area. And as we finally got to our position, we saw that they, as quickly and quietly, began to cover themselves up, making themselves almost completely invisible to anyone passing by. We tried to do the same thing, as we're able to burrow into the ground, but it's pretty noticeable from the air to see where we are, at least for a few hours, until the terrain itself begins to close in. So we decided to join in, digging these strange little caves they had. It seemed that our ability to dig was something the humans liked, as we were able to create one of these small little holes that barely a small canine could fit in. But somehow we were able to squeeze in. And as we looked over, I was right next to my leader again. My commander could see out. Our vision can see a little bit further than humans, and then motioned for one of the humans. He tried to whisper, tried to be as quiet as he could. And then the humans simply stated, "Oh shit." I tried to look, and I could see a few vehicles, but I could see a lot of personnel. The humans call them cancer, and as I see them spreading across the land, getting ready for their assault, I can finally understand why they call it that, now that I have some sort of reference, as the human told me as we were marching. With that, I could see them reach for their radio, their strange communication device. I thought it was going to be difficult to stay quiet, but he simply hit a small button and then whispered in. And I heard a strange command: fire mission. Troops, convoy in the open. Grid, Echo Bravo, 2, Niner, forward, break. 588, 7. How copy? Confirm. Shake and bake, over. Shake and bake out. Flash out, and we waited, and it was silent. I heard something over the radio, and then suddenly the whole place started lighting up with all sorts of heavy artillery. It started blasting in the area. I looked closer as I moved the human out of the way, and I saw that all the area was being hit with high explosive as it came in. Everyone ducked for cover. All the cancer ran to the side and began to duck behind rocks, underneath vehicles, and all this as more and more high explosive came rolling down like rain. And then, before I knew it, something else came down. Something burst, and it began to set everything on fire. I didn't understand. Shake and bake. Is this what they call it? I've never heard of an ordinance called this. I look over and I could smell a distinct smell of phosphorus in the air. Oh, dear Lord. Oh, great Maker, they didn't. They just sent all the cancer on fire. I looked closer and I could see some of them desperately trying to put the flames out now that their carapace was on fire. They began to thrash around on the ground, trying anything to put them out, but eventually the flames simply melted through the carapace and most of them began to flicker on the ground, just kicking their legs as they began to die of shock. If they were lucky, the initial explosions hit them. But still, there were plenty left. Suddenly, I heard something I hope to God I never hear again from one of these humans. Repeat, repeat, repeat. I looked over, confused, and one of the humans simply turned, smiled, and quietly said, "Watch this." With that, another round of high explosive came down, and then another round of these god awful fiery explosives that went and seemed to catch everything on fire. The power cells began exploding. All the personnel were running and screaming in fear. And with that, all we heard from the radio man was target destroyed. And with that, all the humans seemed to know what to do. They stood up and they began to move out, lining up about 20 meters off each of their shoulders as they moved down the hill towards the area. They began to move very fast. We jumped up and got behind them, and we saw as they swept through the area, blasting through everyone and not trying to be quiet at all, constantly screaming and cursing, kicking and throwing. They would throw their god-awful death orbs into one of the holes, and we saw as chunks of the enemy would come flying out. We saw them use those massive weapons. We didn't think they were all that strong, but they punched through the carapace like it was nothing. And with that, they got all the way to the other side. And we realized as we watched the humans kind of chuckle, checking their gear, going through the motions to make sure they knew who was injured and who wasn't, who needed ammo and who didn't, who had water and who didn't, and all the different things, they all seemed to be joking and seemed to enjoy the slaughter that had just happened. It was at that point most of us froze in fear. Not a single one of us had uttered a single sound on the way down the hill. Not one single battle chant was hummed, whistled, sung, or in any way, shape, or form let loose. And we realized something very, very important. We had heard the stories from some of the captured enemies, how they feared humanity because they were just so quiet. Well, that's true. Humanity's military is quiet. Until they're not. I asked one of the soldiers there, the one that had kept telling me to be silent, He wasn't trying to be quiet, as he seemed to be almost jovial in his nature. I asked him, "How is this? How can you be so quiet? You keep telling us to be quiet, and yet you scream the whole way through." "Oh, that's simple," he stated. "We stay quiet until it's time to be loud, but once it's time to be loud, you get really loud." He looked at me, showing his teeth in almost a predatory fashion, which made me shiver so much that even my back legs were shaking at the sight of this. He simply looked and said, "Don't worry, we're going to go back to being quiet now."